So on this episode, we talked about two of the most common questions we get as builders. So if you're thinking about building, this would be a great place to start.
Yeah, we kind of dive into why are these the two most common questions that we get and some of the faults with these questions and the perspective that they have.
On today's episode, we're talking about two of the most common questions that we get asked. Put very simply, how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? Those are just two of the first questions that I think pop into people's minds. They want to know where their money is going and how long it's going to be before they get to move into their home.
Those are valid questions, and certainly understandable that people who have not gone through this process before or understand the complexities of custom home building and design would certainly wonder. And I think what they mean by that is not they're not looking for a direct answer as far as how much is it going to cost, how long is it going to take. They're looking for what are the factors that will make it take longer or go quicker. Mm-hmm. What efficiencies can we look for that make it more cost effective? And so when you give them an answer, the answer is not as simple as it depends, but in fact it does. And what we probably should spend some time talking about are what are the things that those factors depend on.
I agree with you on those are the reasons. I do think that that's not entirely true because I think a lot of people's experience is based on buying homes.
Yeah. I think so too.
Houses are often listed as a price per square foot.
Yeah.
And so in people's minds, that's how you do new construction or remodel. What's the price per square foot? Of course, it does depend on a lot of different factors. Yeah. And I think getting people out of that mindset of, okay, how much is a house price per square foot? I mean, obviously,
and we know
it's not
it depends,
that simple.
But I think that sometimes they really do want I want a number.
Yeah.
Like, what's a number? And I think it's probably frustrating because we know that it depends and we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, and we want to understand everything before we give them a number. And so I know I'm reserved in giving a number until I see something. Yeah. And it feels like we're not wanting to give something. It's like, no, I just don't want to tell you something that's wrong.
And also with very limited information. I mean,
yeah,
this price per square foot on this part of the house is totally different from the price per square foot on this part of the house. Mm-hmm. And so without having a lot of information, you can't just create an average.
Yeah,
that's right. If their basis for the question is their understanding that on the market, new homes are listed for sale at a price per square foot. The reason that's done is because that's an existing product. Everything that needs to be known about the value of that house exists. Mm-hmm. And so when we're asked that question, we're asked, how much does it cost looking at a blank piece of paper?
Right.
So we have no idea of the size, the complexity, the details, the finishes, the site conditions, all those things that could make a huge difference in the overall cost per square foot.
Yeah. And it's hard because this is maybe another topic entirely, but I think a lot of clients want to compare their custom home to existing real estate, and they're just not the same thing.
No.
Even it's if you could find the house you like the most out of everything that's for sale within your price range, it's still not going to be custom to what you want.
Yeah. There's also the other way to look at it, though, is if somebody is trying to build a budget in their head, using, if they have a lot, for example, or an existing home that they're going to rebuild, what does that neighborhood sustain? What are the values in that neighborhood, and how do we design to that? Yeah. So it's still the wrong question to ask. How much does it cost? It's more well, what would you like to get for how much?
Right.
Or what can you get for how much?
Yeah.
And we often have clients that are looking at that question based on not wanting to overspend for a given neighborhood.
Yeah.
So they're just trying to get a feel, are they on the right track? You know, I don't want to spend $10 million in a $5 million neighborhood. That's probably not a great comparative example, but the point is they don't want to spend double what the house next door would be worth or appraised for. And so that makes them reserved in going into it with some expectation that, oh, okay, this is feasible.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we should also say that, I mean, you know, we can build a house, you know, in a range of different price ranges depending on what the design is and all of the different factors. But for us specifically and the way that we go about building a home, there is a floor, there is a minimum to that, right? Like, you know, there are some builders that could build a house for $300 a square foot.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really set up to do that. That's not really what we do. So that, I mean, is maybe also something that somebody is asking.
It could be. I want to establish what I would consider a good rule of thumb for potential clients to think about. That existing home sales, resale homes, if you're looking at a neighborhood that you want to live in and you're finding houses that are $500 a square foot for sale, per square foot, if you can find the home that fits exactly what you want, that doesn't need to be modified, it has the right floor plan, it's a much less expensive process than building one from scratch. But the chances of finding one that's exactly like a client or a family might need, I haven't really seen that.
Yeah, that's right. You have
And
to make
so
compromises.
They generally either buy a home that's in the right neighborhood, that has some things about it they like, and then they spend a good amount of money making it their own through a whole house remodeling project, or they tear down that existing home and build a new one, both of which are fairly expensive processes, but ultimately it gives them that custom product that they're looking for that they can't find on the existing market.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you had said earlier, what the main driving factors are that drive prices. What do you think about that?
Great question. There are, in my mind, 4 or 5 distinct considerations when they start into a remodeling or custom home design process to consider. One huge variable is the site condition. Is it a sloped lot? Is it a small lot? Does it have all the necessary utilities and infrastructure available to it? Are there a lot of trees and vegetation that will have to be managed or mitigated? So site conditions is a big one.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree with that completely.
Right.
That because it can really make a cost go up. I mean, we've done projects that, you know, the foundation cost in order to be able to make the site buildable, it could be $750,000 before you even have a house.
That's right. That's right.
And it's kind of a compounding thing too, because like to me, a lot of the most interesting sites are going to be the hardest to build on.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
That's right. You won't really find a view lot that doesn't have a fairly substantial
Yeah.
amount of slope to it,
that's right.
right? So to get that view, there's a cost involved.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Secondly, I would say architectural complexity. You know, there's a huge range of architectural styles and architectural achievement in modern home design. And the more unique the design is, the more non-mainstream the features are, and the mixture of claddings and glass, that complexity in itself adds interest and character to the home. But again, generally it's at a cost.
yeah. It involves maybe more engineering, so the engineering cost goes up,
Right.
which usually involves more specific materials other than just a stick framing,
Right.
and then things like lots of glass.
Right.
Yeah.
Our forefathers 200 years ago generally built boxes.
Yeah.
because boxes were inexpensive to build. They were structurally
Very efficient.
very efficient. They were thermally easy to maintain temperature. A lot of reasons for that simplicity of architecture.
It's funny too because like I think simple geometries are often actually really hard to execute. Like if you're trying to maintain like sort of like flush transitions and like kind of connections between things. Like there's a lot more work in the design phase to like make it fit the simple look. And then there's a lot more work for us detailing those things and like thinking through all the layers so that they work out together.
Yeah.
Another cost driver is the finishes and the fit and finishes. Those things like you're describing, where you try to achieve unique connections between different materials, which again adds architectural interest in many cases, is a hard detail to pull off and could take the finish carpenter or the painters or drywall plastering entities much longer to execute and therefore cost more.
Something else that I think is often a big cost driver that people maybe don't initially think about kind of goes back to the site conditions, but more broadly, you know, the size or shape of the lot is the landscaping and hardscaping costs. People put a lot of focus into the house itself, but making the lot beautiful and livable and usable in the ways that they want can also often cost quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I think both of those things, it's like site prep and then also like the very end of the site, it covers so much area.
Yeah.
Even if you went with something pretty inexpensive, the area is just so great. It's going to add up.
Yeah, that's
It does. I mean, I think in our experience, it seems like outside the building envelope, clients generally spend 5 to 10% more on all those things that don't go into the structure itself.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I mean, so we often do like high level pricing, right? Initially when we don't have very much information. And so we have a few items that we put in there as considerations, landscaping being one of them, because we don't want people to forget that those costs are also calculated into building a house.
And that's like part of this conversation, I think, too, when someone asks, how much is it going to cost? I think for me, because I'm in the industry, my thinking is that question's asking how much is the construction budget for the house. But in reality, there's a lot of soft costs associated with the design and the engineering and the permitting, and then all of the add-ons like the pool or the hardscape landscape.
Yeah.
Right. It's a complex formula, and it takes a journey with the design team and the client and our team to fully understand what ultimately is going to go into the project. And really the only way we're able to give clients and design professionals some level of expectation of cost and schedule is just purely based on experience. We don't know a lot about your project, but we do know your architect, your design team. We do know that neighborhood. We do know that municipality. We know that for certain design styles, our experience over the last 5 or 10 years has told us that there's certain factors that we can rely on or certain standards that we can rely on that generally could get us in some neighborhood or ballpark. And as you said, we often give clients early on some high-level expectation or range of what the cost could be. And hopefully that's helpful to them and gets them some understanding of, well, I don't quite want to go there, so let's shoot for something in the lower range, lower part of that range. Or, hey, this is great. We're on target. Let's move ahead.
We should also, in this discussion, if people haven't gotten to know us otherwise, like we're not like, oh, I don't know how much it's going to cost and then start building. Like this is the very initial. We then spend pre-construction developing what the actual price is going to be when the plans are developed.
Yeah.
And so,
But
that's probably a whole other
no,
episode.
this is like,
but
I think, a good spot, though, to say, when we first get maybe like a schematic design, we're going to go ahead and kind of work in that price per square foot, which is like the language that the client is maybe familiar
Right.
with.
Yeah.
But I think we start to bring in a little of the it depends, because we start to categorize spaces by tiers. And then they can see like that first step of, oh, it does depend because I've got a huge kitchen and several bathrooms, and I don't really have a lot of spaces that are in that lower tier. And like, if I really want to change the overall cost, maybe I can eliminate a bathroom.
yeah.
But I think like that first step is really the start to them thinking about how all their decisions are going to impact the cost.
Yeah.
Right.
And then what we've started doing is putting together a list of assumptions that we're making to develop that high level price. And those assumptions, again, like you're saying, it then makes people more aware, oh, okay, my decisions will affect the cost of the house.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know until
Yeah.
you see it. And
Yeah.
that actually, I'm curious to hear what our clients are going to say when we start doing that more and they read our assumptions. We're probably going to get some good feedback, like either I haven't thought about that, or, oh, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember some of the assumptions on the last, like maybe the last one that we put together that we had, like just broadly categories.
Yeah, I mean, there's things like foundation assumptions. I mean, like we talk about, there's good, better, best in all these different
Yeah.
places. And so, without having a specific geotech, if we've walked the site, we can make assumptions on, what's going to take to put this foundation together. We make assumptions about cabinets based on, discussions we've had about the style that they like or their, level of finish detail that they want. So we say, hey, we're assuming this percentage of the price or this dollar amount in cabinetry, things like that. We may describe, what we're thinking the siding is, the cladding is going to be, what type of roof you have,
Yeah.
if it's a lot of windows or not so many windows, things like that. Just very general.
Yeah, and then
Stuff.
as we get more information from the
Yeah.
design team, we can actually get bids or estimates on those things.
Yeah.
In answering the question, how much does it cost and how long is it going to take, we can very quickly begin to answer that first in high level terms. And then as we have more information in the plan designs, what we would call a mid-level pricing exercise, which actually begins to look at each of the integral components of the house, whether it's plumbing or framing or roofing, and parse those out. Not so much talking about square footage as the actual components that are going to go in it. And that's very helpful at a midpoint in the design for clients and design professionals to be able to clearly understand where they're ultimately going to head to answer that question of how much it's going to cost.
Yeah. Let me flip this a little bit. Why do you guys think that is one of the most asked questions? I mean, it might seem obvious, but why do you think people are motivated to ask that question? What is the house going to cost?
Well, I think it's several things. One is they're trying to get a feel for what the builders they're interviewing are used to doing, because they can talk to half a dozen different builders, and each builder has experience in different levels of finish, different levels of complexity, different levels of performance. And so they are trying to find their niche. They're trying to find the right fit, not only for design team, but from a home builder as well. And I would say that's probably not necessarily a good way to choose a builder based on the answers to those questions. Because none of the builders at that point understand where they're headed or what they're going to want ultimately.
Yeah.
And they could get information that misleads them as far as who the right fit is.
Yeah.
I think also like another reason is like very simply, they want to know what their money will get them.
Yeah.
And like, can I achieve the sort of dream house that I have in mind for what I have in my bank account?
Yeah.
And, in addition to it always depends, it probably is also always going to cost more than you think it's going to when you first get into it. And part of that, I think, is because not just it costs money to do things right and to do things really well, and to do things that are custom, but also if you're going on that journey, I think a lot of our clients, when they get into it, and myself included, unfortunately, you start to realize, like, if you're going to do something, now is a good time.
Yeah.
And so if you've already entered into that, you're in construction, I think of it even like, especially remodels, like I'm at the tail end of remodeling a house. We got in and started finding all of these electrical problems. And it's like, well, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it now. We better just go ahead and rewire this thing.
Yeah.
And it's a ripple effect, especially if you are really thoughtful about like wanting to do things well, I think. And so it costs, you have to have a lot of discipline or self-control to like not spend the money. It's just easy to spend money.
Yeah.
It really is. And some clients value those things more than others.
Sure.
And so we have one particular client that's an engineer, and he seems to be more interested in those things that are behind the scenes, those things that speak to how well the house will perform and how well it will endure extreme conditions than he does the actual finishes and the characteristics of the architecture. And then we have other clients who are really more interested in how it's going to show or how interesting it's going to be when it's finished, and not so much on the performance features. So again, it's a complex formula, and every project is unique, and every client has different priorities.
Yeah.
What do you think, Daniel? Like, why do you think people ask that?
Yeah, I think it's because they don't know where to begin. Like you said, it's maybe not the best way to interview for a builder, but I think it's because they don't know what the best way to interview for a builder is. And it's a very simple question to ask.
It's kind of like, are you in my
price range?
Buying a car, like,
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't buy a luxury car, or I probably shouldn't buy the economy. Or
So I really do think it's out of inexperience, and it's a starting place. But also too, I mean, it's probably the most important thing when you're, I mean, it's the largest investment you'll likely ever make. And so you need to know, what can I afford?
Yeah. It kind of makes me think of something you said earlier. I kind of wish that I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but I wish that the approach instead was, I have a lot in this neighborhood. You know, these are the site constraints I'm working with, whatever other parameters that we're working with. This is my budget. What can I build here? Where it's more a question of like, what's the quantity I can build with this level of quality, rather than kind of how far can I stretch it?
Yeah. It makes like the question makes me think often too about the way some people, not everyone, but go about buying a car. They've already got in mind, okay, I want a car payment that's X number of dollars a month. And then you go out and you figure out, okay, what can I get for that amount? And I think it's sort of somewhat that mentality of the price per square foot.
It is.
And trying to figure out, okay, well, I have a number in my head of how much money I'm willing to spend on this. And then if I have a price per square foot, then I can do the math and figure out how big a house I can get.
Yeah.
I will say something that's an interesting anecdote. I have a good friend who owns a car dealership. Been doing it for many, many years. And he said, we have fundamentally two different kinds of buyers that come in to buy a car. Some are cash buyers, and they want to know what they can buy for their cash. You have others that are credit buyers, and they want to know what they can buy for their payment. And he said, without exception, the people who are payment buyers get the worst deal. Because we can bake anything into a payment. Right.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And he said, so obviously, looking at what something costs based on limited parameters like that can get buyers in trouble. I really think this is something that's a great point that we probably should touch on. And that is to explain to people you should never look at custom home building and remodeling as a commodity. It's not like buying a car. It's not like buying any major appliance or any major investment that they might make in some thing. It is a process. It's a service for the people that you hire, design professionals and contractors, providing a service, creating something that is ultimately going to add to your lifestyle, your living experience, and the enjoyment and happiness of your family. You have to look at it like an experience,
Yeah.
something that you're going to invest, like a vacation. What's it worth to go enjoy this experience? This is just a lifelong experience.
Yeah.
It's not a short vacation. So if they look at it in terms of that, how it's going to affect their day-to-day lives and how it's going to affect their ease and comfort of their day-to-day, that's the way they should look at the investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not buying a house, you're building a home.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like there's some experience to that too.
Right.
Just even the experience of if you've been on, I feel like I've told so many friends, especially in Austin, because I think the Austin AIA home tour is really good. If you've never seen a true custom home designed by an architect and built by a custom builder, going on that tour is so eye-opening.
Yeah.
Because the difference between just kind of a normal home and one of those homes is huge.
Yeah.
It is.
I think something that's worth pointing out is that is a perspective. What you've described is a perspective, and it doesn't necessarily speak to the amount of money somebody is spending, right? So
Yeah.
anybody at any price level can have
That's true.
that perspective, and it's not reserved for the wealthy folks.
No, that's right.
It's really because there are architects at every level, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a perspective. It's an ideology of how you go into thinking about what you're doing with your money and
For
how
sure.
you're building a home.
That's right.
Yeah, actually, I have two close friends who recently hired interior designers to help them kind of just give their homes a refresh. And I've heard from both of them how much they valued that experience and how much and I saw personally too, how much it changed their homes. And it really changes like their experience and how they spend time at home now. They want to be at home
Yeah.
because they enjoy their space.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we, they're kind of hand in hand, but should we switch over to the how long will it take
Yeah.
part of the question? And what drives that?
Yeah.
Well, again,
1 year
yeah.
and maybe a month to design.
Yeah.
It's not a linear equation. A house that's twice the size doesn't necessarily take twice as long.
Right.
A house that's twice as complex probably does take twice as long. So it's not a function of size as much as it is the variables that go into it. Difficult sites, again, difficult or unique designs, unique finishes or high-end finishes, and many high-performance features add time and complexity as well. For example, there's a moving trend to do more and more exterior insulation on new homes to make them perform better, make them endure weather events better. But imagine that we used to just frame a home and wrap it with felt paper, which was 2 trips around the house. Now, with insulation and weather barriers and claddings, we can do 3, 4, 5, 6 trips around the house, putting on the different layers to make it perform better.
Yeah.
That costs money and it takes time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should talk about us specifically and
Yeah.
the projects that we do because that may interest people because everyone has different experiences that have built homes at different scales or on different levels. But for us, usually we are in pre-construction for quite a bit of time. And that can range from 6 months to a year and a half.
Or more.
Or more. But, we're somewhere in that. And then construction time is somewhere typically, between 18 and 30 months. And 30 is pretty long, but, maybe 2 years is a typical build for us.
Yeah.
And
Would it be helpful at all to put like a number to that, a construction cost number to that, like the ranges of, I don't know if like, just, it's changed over the years, I know, but like, just like currently sort of like where we're typically seeing projects fall for those time ranges?
Price-wise?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting phenomenon in our business. I can only speak specifically to our business, that with the trade base we have, with the supplier base we have, working very closely with design professionals and clients, there seems to be an upper limit on how much work we can put through a project in a given month.
mm-hmm.
And so regardless of the value of the home or the complexity, just the logistics of getting a certain number of people and resources on site and having the right space to stage and supply and park all of those people safely has limitations to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can manage to build $250,000 to $350,000 a month, that's an extremely productive month.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes it's $100,000 to $150,000 a month, depending upon the phase of the work that's happening at any given time.
Right.
And so that in and of itself kind of answers the question, if a particular project is valued at $5 million, you can sort of interpolate how long that will take.
Yeah. Well, and just broadly, I think we see a lot of projects that kind of fall between 2-3 million to 15, somewhere in that range.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially at least the time I've been here. And so like, I think just as categories while you're talking about timelines, it's kind of helpful to think.
Yeah.
Sure.
Something you said that I thought was very interesting and true. We do some urban infill construction projects where there is no space for staging materials, there's no space for parking. That does increase the timeline because the logistics of having to wait for things to arrive and shift stuff around, and compared to if you have a wide open job site where you can just drop all the materials, get all the trucks in, and have people working, that really does drive the timeline.
For sure.
It does. Location have something to do with it too. If it's a rural or semi-rural site, getting facilities out there, getting trades out there, getting deliveries out there oftentimes slows down the project as well. So again, speaks to location and site conditions. The $3 million to $8 million project is what we see most of. And generally those projects take 18 months to 24 months to complete.
Yeah, that's what we found for sure.
Yeah. And that also, like, back to the it depends thing, the quicker we can get people out, like the ease of getting materials and people there are two factors. Another is how quickly we can get responses from design teams and owners. There will be questions that come up. There will be selections that haven't been made.
Yeah.
And if someone takes, if it's a month to get a decision on something and we're waiting on it, it can really hold up the schedule.
Yeah. Something that sort of ties the two questions together when we are working on longer projects like this is, prices in the market change over the course of 2 years. And so us constantly having to sort of reevaluate and update our budgets, because when we priced this 2 years ago, lumber was X dollars, and now it's 2 years. Well, it's a year and a half later, a year later, whatever it is that, that can change. And so we do try to mitigate some of that by, when we are ready to start construction, ordering as many things as we can if it appears that the trend is upward, which it almost always is. Prices don't really go down.
Prices never go down. But are we contractually agreed to do business with a vendor or contractor so that they will lock in their price over that time? Yeah, that often helps too.
Yeah.
Most of the trades that we use, the subcontractors, we have a long-standing history with, and the conversations that we have with them before and throughout the job help keep us on track to stay on schedule, stay on budget. The more information we have when we start a project, the more complete the design documents are, the more accurate we can be in estimating, predicting what things are going to cost and how long they're going to take.
For sure.
There are a lot of things that happen. It is a custom process, and there are variables that slow us down sometimes. Often we can make that up in schedule and in budget. It's important that all the stakeholders that are involved in the design, and especially the clients, stay actively engaged on a regular basis so they can be part of the solution to any obstacles that we run across to keep us on schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that as a building company, we do better if we can finish a job on time. If a
for
job
sure.
drags out, that's not good for us.
No.
That ends up being less profitable.
I think that's a great point that everyone has to understand about the process. That if you look at the model of a home building company, that we are charging a fee for building a custom home. And if the project costs X, our fee is X times a percentage, whatever that happens to be for any given project. And we have an overhead cost to running our business that is generally a set run rate. For a given size company, we spend X amount of dollars per month on overhead. If we're having to provide overhead for a project for 24 months instead of 20 months, we're spending that extra 4 months in overhead and still only making that same amount of builder fee.
Right.
So obviously, the longer it takes, the less net profit we would make.
Yeah.
I think that's important for people to understand that our motivation is just as strong as everyone's to finish the job effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We want it to be done quicker or,
Yeah.
just as quick as they do.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it is obviously, it's also a balance. Like, we are not rushing through a project just to get to the end of
for
it,
sure.
right? Because then
Yeah.
what'll end up happening is we get lots of callbacks and we have unhappy customers, and we don't want that. So it is trying to be as efficient as we can moving through each phase of the project.
That's a great point. That
Making a lot of those today, huh?
again,
We should keep track, like a little tally mark, who gets the most great points.
I hope everyone understands that we don't look at a project as being completed when the clients take possession of it.
Yeah.
Right.
That the real completion of a project is when the project is adjusted and commissioned and punched and touched up to the point that the client is completely satisfied that they now feel it's finished in their eyes. And if we don't do a good job during construction before they move in, that process to get it to the point they want it after they take possession gets protracted to where it makes the project really not take 20 or 24 months, but now 30 months because we were there 6 months trying to make it just right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a no benefit to anyone. So, yes, it's a balancing act between aggressively maintaining a planned schedule, but at the same time take the time to do it right the first time. Because as to your point, while you're here, we might as well do it right,
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's more expensive and longer
For sure.
if we do it later.
Yeah.
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 I think everyone understands that
Well, and
fundamental concept.
I really, really love that mindset and approach, because if you're investing the time and the effort and the expense to build a custom home, like, how wonderful is it that after you move in, you're going to get ongoing service to tweak and fix and make everything just right.
Yeah.
It's a huge value.
Yeah.
I wonder also, like, this is like a very broad question, but to add one more on how long does it take, how long do we typically see like that customer service period lasting? Do we know?
It depends. It depends.
Yeah.
No, because with that customer service, there is that sort of commissioning punch. those kinds of things. But then there's also the service of while somebody's living there, they're like, oh, you know what? I didn't realize during the design phase that I actually wanted an outdoor kitchen.
Right.
So then
They want to add things.
or they want to add
scope
things or
changes.
change stuff after having lived there. And so we have some clients that keep
Right.
asking us to come back to do additional work, which is still that customer service period. Other people, we get through, 2 or 3 months afterwards and then we don't hear from them again. I don't know that that
Yeah.
happens that often,
Yeah.
but
That's a good range, though, at least. It's
yeah.
like it may be a couple months, or you may decide you want to add something else, and it's
and
down the road.
it can sometimes it drags on so long that we're constantly adding things to their home and then they sell it and buy a new one and they have us build that home.
Same client, different house.
Sometimes the people that buy the house have us come in and
That's
That's
right.
true.
That is
tweak
all,
it for them.
That's also happened. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we marry ourselves to a given project, love to marry ourselves to a client, but if the client moves, we still feel obligated to monitor that home and make sure that it performs well for whoever owns it. And the client, if they move to a new home, we would love to stay engaged with them and provide customer service wherever they live.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. We have some clients that I can think of one that we've been interacting with through some sort of remodel or new construction or customer service for 10 years. Yeah,
Wow.
and they now want us to continue doing more work for them, another fairly big scope
Wow.
remodel. Some people just enjoy the experience. That's our goal.
Yeah.
we want to create
That's right.
such a wonderful experience that people don't want us to go away.
Yeah.
Like undo the stereotype that's kind of like, it's a bad experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
I feel like that's a pretty good start.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think
no.
we can on future episodes expand on some of those
Yeah.
things, maybe talk about how we figure out how much a house is going to cost
Yeah.
in more detail.
Yeah. So to answer the question, it depends.
It depends. That's it for another episode of Work in Process. Thanks for listening. If you've got a question, a topic suggestion, or want to start a project with us, send an email to hello@risingerbuild.com.
You can also find us on Instagram at risingerbuild_ATX or on YouTube by searching Risinger Build. We'd love to hear from you.